Like I say, it's always best if I wait and see if we're actually going up, and I guess we are. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Uh, yes, today is the 21st of May, 2024. Man, 2024, get that straight. And I haven't been on for a while, as a lot of you know. It's actually been, I think, a week or two. And I wanted to come on today for a specific reason, because it has something to do with what I explained back in 2013, earlier on when I was on YouTube. In 2013, you may recall that there was a little disturbance called the Boston bombing. And when that came out, hello everyone. When that came out, when that happened, I saw some things that I realized there was an internal conflict that was being resolved, or at least being contested between certain parties in the federal government. And the bottom line on my analysis of the Boston bombing thing is that, first of all, as we found out later, the FBI, when they put that picture up of the Zarnov brothers walking along by the men's clothing store and saying, hey everybody, help us identify these people, please. The fact of the matter was is that they knew who the Zarnov brothers were. That came out later. And that they were basically informants working for the intelligence services. So they weren't unknown to the FBI or the CIA or any of that. And I made that point. Also, there was a situation where we knew that there was a mercenary group. I'm not going to name it here for a couple of reasons, but you can go back and check my uploads back in 2013 on the Boston bombing. I think they're still there unless they got censored and taken down, which wouldn't surprise me, but I haven't gone back to check. But at any rate, yeah, no, not 30 years ago. No, this was 2013. 2013 during the Boston bombing. 2013. I'm not talking about the situation there at World Trade Center in 1992 or whenever it was, that first attack on the World Trade Center. That's not what I'm talking about. The Boston bombing, where the Boston Marathon, where they were out running and all of a sudden two supposed pressure cooker bombs went off, injuring a lot of people, and there was a lot of Hollywood stunt stuff going on there, and I pointed it out. I'm not going to go through all that here because it'll just cause the algos to go crazy. But basically, I called that it was a theatrical production. I'm just going to put it that way. But more than that, there was, as I pointed out, there was a conflict or I should say, a struggle for predominance amongst two particular agencies in the federal government at that time. And it had been going on for a number of years, but this was kind of the culmination, in my estimation. It was between the FBI and the CIA. And they were both kind of running this op. I'm not sure how much one knew about what the other one was doing, but this mercenary group, I'm fairly certain, was run by the CIA. And and again, I don't want to name it, but it had a skull as its moniker, as its identification, and then the FBI as well. And the whole thing was a debacle, and it caused so many difficulties. If you remember, the Zarnov brothers turned out really bad for them. The whole thing there in Watertown, as you recall. It was, you remember Katrina. When Katrina happened, the answer by the Bush administration and by the DOD and by the chief of police of New Orleans was to confiscate all the good citizens' weapons. If you don't think that the DOD will turn against you, if they did it in 2000, what was that? 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in there. 6 maybe, I don't remember exactly when Katrina was, but it was somewhere back in there. If you think that the military that did it then is a problem. Well, think about what it's like today. They have almost no loyalty, especially in the upper ranks or in the bureaucracies, for you, none at all. So they will do it again. That's my first concern. So that was the Katrina thing. Well, in the Boston bombing situation, what occurred is that, if you remember, they put militarized police out on the streets. People were locked in their homes. They did searches of homes without warrants, and they said that it was okay because of the anti-terrorism acts, which, by the way, no act of Congress, period. You can ask Chris Ann Hall about this. You can ask Josie of the Red-Headed Libertarian, and a lot of other people. An act of Congress cannot supersede or lay waste to any part of the Constitution. That's a line of lies that we've been fed for a long time. But I also understand, as Legal Man says on Twitter, and he also has a thing called U.S. Crime Review. If you people know what I'm talking about, he says, well, the Constitution's a piece of paper and it doesn't mean anything. And that's true. It's been violated almost since day one. For instance, and I'm diverging a little bit here, but I'm giving you a little history. Supposedly, we broke away from Britain over the issue of unjust taxes, and also the British trying to come and take our weapons, and some other things that are listed in the Declaration of Independence. Well, one of the first things that happened after we became a country is we had the Whiskey Rebellion. They were trying to tax the people, the farmers and the people out there that were making whiskey, and they rebelled. And President Washington sent an army after them. He even led it. So it went down the tubes almost immediately. And then, of course, the next big thing that happened was the Alien and Sedition Acts, which were, basically unconstitutional as well, the way they were instituted. So we've been kind of a farce from the very beginning. And then there was that whole thing of manifest destiny, which I won't get into, but there were a lot of problems with that. And we're using that to justify some of the things that are happening in the world today. And it's wrong. But at any rate, so the Zarna brothers, they maintained their innocence. Of course, one of them, as I recall, was shot dead. The other one was shot in the boat, and miraculously survived and maintained his innocence the entire time. But the big problem was when they sent those cops and I think there were some military people involved as well, out and without warrants, going through people's homes looking for the terrorists. So it took all those people to go after one little lone teenager, and they were willing to violate the rights of everybody in Watertown and that part of Boston. Okay, that's the government you're dealing with. And again, you go back to Katrina and the same thing. Well, I maintain that, as I said at the time, was a conflict to resolve some issues between the FBI and the CIA. In my estimation, the CIA won, and actually the FBI is run by the CIA today, in my estimation. But at any rate, so when I did that series on the Boston bombing, InfoWars picked it up. Alex was gone on a vacation or something. Alex Jones, I don't remember the details about where he was, but he had Mike Adams of Natural News hosting the show. And Mike Adams put up a portion, I think it was almost all of one of my shorter videos of my analysis of the Boston bombing. And I was surprised that they would do that. Nobody contacted me. Now, I've made it known all along, Mike Adams, you need to remember this. I think I'll send this to him when I get done and send it to him on Twitter. I contacted InfoWars and you, and I said, thank you for putting it up. I have no problem with you using it. I don't require anybody to ask permission. I don't have any copyrights on any of my work. I only ask, like you did, that you put it up the way I intended it, and they did that. Well, interestingly enough, they took it down not too long after that. And I think what happened was Alex and I we've never met. I've never met Alex. I've met David Knight, and I've met some other people from InfoWars, but Alex was afraid of me, I think, because I might taint his organization if he gave me any credence. Oh, it's okay to have, I better not mention any names, but some people who deal in the same gender that's even the wrong word, but just to get around the algorithms here. Well, let me just say that Milianopoulos, I think was his name. You should know about him. It's fine to have him on there, but Roy Potter, oh no, 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 we can't have Roy Potter. He stirred up a lot of things that, all my Christian followers and all my followers will get upset because of who he is and what he stands for. And it was basically freedom of association is what I was dealing with, and a lot of you know my history on that. But that's not really material. Other than that, they took it down. They took that little part of the video explanation analysis down without an explanation. They just took it down, and I'm pretty sure that Alex said I don't want him up there, and that's okay. It's his platform or whatever. But I just wanted you to know that happened. Well, I was talking about this internal struggle for power amongst the fifth branch of government. Now, there is no fifth branch of government. The Constitution talks about we the people, the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. We the people is a branch of government because we were the ones that formed the whole other thing, right? They gave power, certain enumerated powers, which have long since been taken over, all of the power of the states and everything. I mean, the whole Constitution has been subverted by the very government that was supposed to protect it. But the situation with that fifth branch of government was that it was supposed to be under the executive branch. And I'm talking about things like the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence community, the military, those kinds of things. But they became an entity in and of themselves. We all know about the Epstein thing now, the blackmail run by the IC. And the IC isn't just in America. It's a secret combination that spans the Western world and includes even places like Israel. Okay, I'll just say it that way. They seek power for this fifth branch, this intelligence community, this what I call a secret society, secret combination, and they tried to usurp, and they've done a pretty good job, usurp the power of the other three branches, where the other three branches are afraid of them. And we know about Epstein and the blackmailing and who knows what else, right? All of that. Okay, yeah, I see as transnational. I think you're absolutely right about that. That's been not saying that the MI6 doesn't have some things where they're trying to outdo the CIA, for instance, or whatever, but they're all together on the same page as far as taking power for themselves, away from the elected officials and people like that. In other words, make the people subservient to their decrees and edicts. And that's, the Five Eyes is a good example, Sandy. So I'm giving you that little background so that you'll know what I was talking about with the Boston bombing, that was kind of like one of the final struggles between the FBI and the CIA to get predominance. Okay, that was the whole idea. And Mike Adams agreed with what I said, but then Alex Jones had it taken down. I'm pretty sure it was Alex. I don't think Mike would have had any intention of doing that. Anyway, so now, everything that's happened since then, right? We had the whole situation, and I'm not saying that General Michael Flynn was entirely innocent the way he was operating prior to actually Trump taking office. There are a lot of questions on that. George Webb covers it quite well. But that's not the issue. The issue became something else was going on there. The executive branch was being the president, and I don't like Trump. At the time I did, but of course that ended by 2018. But the executive branch, more than even the Congress, was trying to undermine the office of the presidency, and in particular President Trump. And they weren't working for him; they were working to get him. Now that's happened in some other things in history, and I won't go over those. The Nixon time period was a good example. Reagan ran into that to some extent, especially with his chief of staff, Alexander Haig. But that's another story as well. The point is that there's been this effort by the fifth branch of government, which doesn't constitutionally exist, but which has seized power to control the other three branches and to control the people. And they had to resolve this internal conflict, and they finally did. and what I'll raise for evidence of this situation where the CIA finally won out was the Peter Strzok episode. Peter Strzok was supposedly kicked out of the FBI, but in fact he was picked up. He didn't leave the federal payroll. He may have left the federal payroll, but he came underneath the CIA payroll. So he didn't really leave at all. He was working for the CIA, and maybe for the entire time. That kind of came out later. Yeah, continuity of government too. Yeah, that's another issue here, Edgar. I appreciate you putting that up. So Peter Strzok is a good example of what I'm talking about, where this entire IC kind of falls under. At this point, my estimation of the CIA, it might go to some higher organization than that, but the CIA is definitely the one where all of these things are being controlled. So roll forward now to the situation with President Trump leaving office, and there's a legal question as to whether or not he actually formally declassified the documents he took. That I can't speak to. There are attorneys that can do a lot better job than that, but my understanding is that his very word is all that's needed. Now, Judge Napolitano says, well, there's some forms you need to fill out. Maybe so, but the point is he was president, he had declassification authority, and I'm just going to leave it with that. And apparently what he took concerned and this is all over the internet right now. The mainstream media is talking about it. I'll give you some background here in a little minute, why I decided to come on. But apparently what he took was evidence of the entire false accusations that were made against him and his administration as to the Russian collusion narrative. He has the goods on that. That's the scuttlebutt as to why the FBI actually raided Mar-a-Lago, because even though they had been negotiating with him to get some things back, which apparently the National Archives did get back some of it, but there were issues on the other side of things, and the FBI then decided to raid Mar-a-Lago even after they had been holding discussions with the president and his staff to get some of these things. Regardless, what occurred here, as you all know now, and Julie Kelly broke this just today, and I put, as soon as I saw it, I mentioned it on my X account this morning. Julie Kelly and her brother Jesse Kelly are amazing people. I really have a lot of appreciation for them, what they do. They speak truth to power, and they don't back down. And I really like that. We may not agree on everything, but that doesn't matter. It's their integrity that I so much appreciate. So anyway, Julie Kelly's been following this January 6th thing and also the Trump trials. And we found out today, she brought the documents out today, that the FBI, under, of course, Merrick Garland, the AG, and Christopher Wray, were involved in basically an armed assault with orders to use deadly force going into Mar-a-Lago if it became necessary. Now, Crossfire Hurricane is what we're talking about as far as the evidence and all of that. That's true. So what occurs here is that you have a federal agency, the FBI, working under the auspices of the CIA. It's really just a CIA front now, the CIA appendage. And they've been given orders to basically raid Mar-a-Lago, and because the Secret Service is there, to be prepared for use of deadly force. So they set up a situation here. I don't know who was there to help calm this thing down. I've heard some other things which I'm going to cover here in a minute, but you had the FBI go in there, basically raiding the place with orders to use deadly force if necessary to obtain these evidentiary documents that will basically convict the people that were running the Crossfire Hurricane scam and all of that. So that was the real reason for the raid, and they were willing to kill for it, and the FBI was set directly against, and here's the point, the Secret Service. So you had two federal agencies with statutory rights to, first of all, the Secret Service to protect the former president, but the FBI supposedly having the right to initiate this action to enforce the law. I don't believe that nonsense, but that's the statutory idea. Were placed against each other. Is the Secret Service not entirely under the CIA's control yet? Well, that's probably true. The Secret Service historically has been kind of a separate agency to some extent, and even though I think for sure that there are CIA operatives, et cetera, in the Secret Service, I have no doubt about that. Overall, I think the agency has not been entirely taken over at this point. The U.S. Marshal Service, I don't know about them either. But the point that I'm making is that when we saw that Mar-a-Lago raid, what we saw was an extension of the conflict in the IC and amongst the other federal government positions, other government bureaus and departments and all that, that developed into an internal civil war amongst the federal government agencies. That's what we're seeing. So that came out today, thanks to Julie Kelly and I. I wanted to bring something. I wasn't exactly going to explain it that way a few years ago when all this first happened with the raid on Mar-a-Lago, but we kind of danced around the issue, and now here it is. And thanks to Julie Kelly, we know, and everybody's talking about it, as they should. Apparently, the MSM is still avoiding it for whatever reason, because they're controlled by the intelligence community, right? The MSM is the propaganda arm of the intelligence community and the government generally. So they don't want their dirty laundry to be out there. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna bring up something else here, and I wondered whether I should do this or not, but I'm just going to come out and say it because Julie Kelly and had been talking apparently to Dan Bongino. Now Dan Bongino and I have not had the best of relationships. I mean, I've never met him. I've never really talked to him, but we butt heads in the cyber space. Okay, and I think overall Dan has a pretty good handle on things. I certainly give him credit for understanding how the internal workings of the Secret Service are, and federal agencies as well. I've worked with the FBI in the past. As you know, I have a playlist about FBI corruption. I saw it firsthand, both professionally and personally. Okay, so I have lots of reasons to say what I do about the FBI and about the IC in general. The motto on my channel is the IC is our most dangerous domestic enemy, and it's proven to be true. Absolutely 100%. I've been right about that and vindicated on it. Well, so Julie Kelly and Dan Bongino were talking about a particular former federal agent, and if he watches this, he'll say, "Why don't you just say my name?" Well, because there's a lot of other things I could say, sir, and I don't want to go there today. All right. But I've been suspicious about you for a long time, especially when you came out against James O'Keefe in the way that you did. Now everybody knows what I'm talking about. The way he attacked James O'Keefe was juvenile muckraking. That's the wrong term. Juvenile name calling to try to discredit him, and the situation that he was using to try to discredit O'Keefe was really personal business of O'Keefe's, and the lady involved had nothing to do with this guy who was using FBI agency tactics to try to smear O'Keefe. I contacted him, and he didn't really appreciate what I had to say to him. Okay, you want to say that O'Keefe is dirty, that's fine, but that's not the point. The point is that I could say that about anybody in the government or in the media, Sandy. Okay, you want to talk about Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, with what he's doing? Both of those guys. So you want to talk about dirty? Don't get off the topic, okay? I'd appreciate it if you'd stick with me on this and not try to point fingers like the person I'm talking about. I'm trying to show you what's occurred, and if you're going to fall into this name-calling thing without a whole lot of evidence, you may not like me, You can say I'm dirty because of my personal life. Does that mean that what I'm telling you isn't true? I really wonder why I do this sometimes. The point is that this particular former federal agent was using the same smear tactics that the agency uses. And I went, oh shit, what is this guy? All right. Well, Julie Kelly and Dan Bongino apparently saw, from my estimation, there may be some other former federal agents that were trying to muddy the water as well about what the FBI did at Mar-a-Lago, being a standard boilerplate SOP operation, which it was not, especially on the circumstances of two federal agencies going head to head that could have turned into a bloodbath. Well, that would have been interesting. But both Dan Bongino and Julie Kelly brought up that they were upset that this particular, that these I don't know if they're talking about a group of federal agents. I saw one that did this, former federal agents. The federal agents who were saying that this was boilerplate, what happened, and it was totally normal. And they made the point, especially Dan Bongino, no, it is not normal. Especially when you're talking about a former president and two federal agencies going gun barrel to gun barrel. That was the issue, and I was so happy to see that Dan Bongino and Julie Kelly addressed that. You need to have a thicker skin, Roy? No. I'm a see, lowrider. The point is, if we don't call people out, I have a lot of patience. But if we're going to get stuck on meaningless things of smearing people because of their personal life, we've got a problem. We got to get away from that. You notice, I don't like Trump, and I'm not sitting here talking about his many marriages and divorces or his, escapades, because that doesn't matter. What I care about is if he can govern the country. And that's my issue with him, because I don't think he can. But he's certainly better than Biden. But I also know that it looks like to me that, and I've said it for years now, that Trump is a betrayer by trade. His legacy is betrayal, and I don't trust him. Look at the rhinos that he's backing. Look at the people he talks about, bringing into his administration if he gets in there. Will he support the Second Amendment? Will he back off of trying to shut people's speech down because of their disagreement with Israel? I don't know. Is he going to pardon the J6ers that deserve to be? Some of them don't deserve to be, but most of them do deserve to be pardoned. Is he actually going to follow through? Well, we're going to have to wait and find out. He's got to get elected first, but then it might be too late to turn things around, because if he doesn't do what he says he will do, Katie, bar the door, go ahead and lean over and kiss your ass goodbye. So stop with the name calling. I'm not concerned about people's private lives. Maybe James O'Keefe occasionally makes a big deal about an undercover story that he's with that's really not that big of a deal. But you try to do it. Okay? And that's what I told this guy. Then you go do what James O'Keefe is doing. I'm not saying he's perfect. And maybe he did take some money he wasn't supposed to from his organization. I really don't know. And I don't care. Because nobody's perfect. But I'll tell you one thing. This whole thing in the government, when they're willing to use gun barrel to gun barrel to enforce one group of agencies against another, you think the Civil War was bad in the 1860s, this could be really bad. Okay, well, Sandy, all right, then what was your point? I didn't call him a name, and what I said has nothing to do with his personal life. Well, what do you mean he's a scumbag then? Put it up. Let me see what you're talking about. Give me an example. I'll wait. Give me an example, Sandy. Give me the example that you're talking about. He said he's dirty. Sandy, go away, okay? That's not sufficient. That's the same thing as calling him a name. Okay, I'm done. If that's what I've got on here, what the hell am I trying to do? Yeah, I'm triggered. You better believe it. Because this is why we're in trouble. I hear these damn Christians out there who say things about people because, oh, same thing. Oh, Trump had these side affairs and stuff. I'm not saying they're good. We have 2,000 years of bullshit under us, and we still can't smell it. This is why I think I'm going to stop. And that's why you see me not coming on here very much more. I talk about things like this, and people don't get it. Am I saying I'm wholeheartedly 100% right about the things I bring to you? No. But things that we've been told are outright lies, and they've been outright lies for millennia. So, getting back on topic. There's always been a competition amongst federal agencies, amongst any organization. There are competitions. I understand that. Even in a company, you have the marketing section, trying to outdo or find dirt on say the distribution aspect of the company, and I understand that. But we're talking about gun wielding federal agencies at odds with each other. And it was planned by Merrick Garland, by Ray, and by Biden, or should I say President Obama, former President Obama, who really probably runs the show. That was my point in wanting to come on tonight. I suggest, as I've often said, you better prep, pray, and try to stay out of the way. You're not going to fix this. This, I hope, obviously, of who we've got up for this election, of course Trump would be the selection, but his track record really isn't as good as people seem to think that it is. So I don't have high hopes that anything's going to actually get fixed. But at least there's a smidgen of hope there. I heard Lionel of Lionel Nation today. You know who Lionel is? He put it pretty well. He described Biden as a cancer. And he said that Trump is chemo. And he made the really good point that chemo is a poison and it will kill you too. And I agree. That's what Trump is. But at this point, what else can we do? I was hoping that the states would get together, but I don't see that happening. Competent state authority, that was the thing about this Ivan Raiklin. When he first came out, and I put up some posts on X about it, and I put up a post on YouTube here on the community posts. He's a lawyer, he's a former Army officer, and he came out and he says, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're going to go, we've got investigators, we know who the players are, who the deep state players are, and we're going to go after them. Okay, great. And he says, and this is how we're going to do it. Basically, is the way I understood. We're going to go in and we're going to get them under using the states and the county sheriffs. Okay, that's kind of what I've called for. Now there's some jurisdictional problems there, but it can be worked out in some ways. And I thought that sounds pretty good. And then I started listening a little more intently about what he was saying, and I realized that, in my estimation, this is something you probably don't want to get involved in. So I put up a couple of warnings about it. For one, he's linked in real close with General Michael Flynn, and I do not trust General Michael Flynn for a lot of reasons, and I've enumerated those in the past. They want to drag you down another Jan 6. I mean, two things Michael Flynn did, and I talked about it before. He's supposed to be the top intelligence guy. The old name was Spook, right? I'm not making any racial pejoratives there. This is what they used to call these guys. And he's supposed to be the top-notch dude, and it takes over the DIA. And he knew, supposedly, going into this thing with Trump back in 2016, that the deep state was after Trump. So why did he allow himself to get entrapped by the FBI? Because I think he planned it. I think he was in on it. And his subsequent actions kind of prove it. I don't care that it looks like he lost, money and stuff. Frankly, I haven't seen that. You got a lot of people even thought about him running for president if Trump doesn't do it. So and then you've got the situation with January 6th. Here they go in there, and I blame Alex on this as well. You go in there, you have no internal security to protect your demonstration. Michael Flynn should have at least put together some type of a security thing where they could have had eyes and ears out of the crowd. Apparently they didn't do that. And when they finally realized it was a problem, it was too late. So in my estimation, that was a failure on Michael Flynn's part. Somewhat on Alex Jones, true, but primarily on Michael Flynn. I just can't believe it. I was a lowly lieutenant colonel, and I know better than to do the shit he's done or hasn't done. I'm sorry, I guess some people here got me a little ticked off tonight. We're in a precarious situation. We better put down our little petty differences and start looking at the big picture and going after it. We're going to find allies that are in places that maybe we wouldn't want to be there. Okay? But for the sake of the lives of you and your loved ones, you better put away your petty differences. So anyway, yeah, I think this whole thing with Ivan Raiklin, I would put a lot of real estate between myself and that whole plan. And I noticed that George Webb has made the same warning. All right. Well, that's all I wanted to cover today. Yeah, I lost my cool. But, when it's a matter of life and death, I mean, it's like being out, you get dragged into a shooting fight somewhere and you got the other side shooting at you and the guy next to you, he has his hat on backwards, and you're making mountains out of molehills when you've got a life or death situation and you let these things take you down another path. Don't do that. I guess I could get into the thing to show you how this works. I could show you this whole thing about Israel and the Palestinians right now. Look how that's divided our country. And it's on purpose. It's not just, and I'm going to say it, it's not just to do ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinians. Any other place we would be up in arms about it, even though we weren't really up in arms about it in Rwanda or in Libya or any number of other, Cambodia, we talk about that, but really, no, there are some real problems with all this, but this situation with what's going on, and I have I have a lot of respect for the ancient Israelite religion, even though there are questions about what that was, for instance. The issue actually is that I try to balance the things that are a problem against the things that are good, and I separate those, okay? The only reason why I focused on some of the negatives lately is because those things are being used to do unjust crimes, horrible, horrible things in God's name, and I'm sick of it. So I've had to point out some things that people would say is dirty laundry there, but I've studied the Judaism, Israelite, Hebrew stuff for 4 decades plus. So I certainly have the credentials to call these rabbis and these so-called Jewish leaders out. And they're not, all the Jews aren't bad. Not all of them follow Talmudic BS. Some of the Talmud's good, some of it isn't. How did we get here? Just because I'm showing you that, yes, I have some issues with with Jews generally, especially if they have any respect for the Talmud or that Amalekite bullshit. All right? If they have, and I could go into a lot of other stuff, but basically, if they're trying to be good people, trying to bless others, trying to portray and do loving kindness, I'm going with that. I don't like Christianity because of the way it's all been corrupted. But as long as it's trying to do the right thing, helping people, I'll back off the dogma and the doctrine. Okay, I'll let that go. And the same with Muslims. But then you start talking about forcing Sharia law down my throat, or no hide laws down my throat, or the things like what happened during the Spanish Inquisition down my throat, and I'm not going to go for it. I'm not going to sit here and gag on it. All right, I'm done. If I pissed off some people today, just grow up, people. Grow up. There's not much time left. Yeah, they consider us beasts of the field. I put up a lot of information. If you'd like to look on my X account, and I know people say, I don't want to join X. Okay, fine. But that's where I've been most active over the last several months. All of you know that I'm, taking care of some family issues in the Northwest. I don't know how much longer I'll be in this area, but maybe for a while yet. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know who Adam Green is. The problem, I think Adam Green, he says a lot of truth. He does. But I sense in him a hatred for the Jews, which and maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my issue with him. You can't hate the Jewish people just because of how they've been manipulated by a small group of power-hungry psychopaths. Same with Christianity. Same with Islam. Like I said, though, all the Abrahamic religions have been corrupted. Okay, yeah. So Adam Green is pretty much good, as far as his information. Like I said, I think that there's a disdain rather than a true historical understanding of what happened to those people and how it evolved in the way that it did. All right, that's all I'm going to do. What does this say? When it was Twitter at your recommendation, I was almost immediately banned. No, yeah, I could tell you some stories. Lately here, I have been getting so many things. I'll be a really controversial post that somebody puts up. I'll forward it or I'll make a comment on it. And I mean, it's happened several times a week now where I'll get we noticed some unusual activity on your account and now you have to verify who you are. That's happened twice this week so far. I think it's happened at least twice a week now for the last several weeks. Adam doesn't hate Jews, just some. Okay. Maybe Adam and I ought to talk sometime. He's very knowledgeable. I'll give him that. Emergency exit. I want to thank you for the things that you've been sending me and some of the conversations, communication that we've had. Emergency exit. I want to tell you I appreciate that. And there's some others too. I think it's Aleph Bait something. Mr. Shul, I think is his name on there. Thomas Griffith, and Roosevelt, of course. There are a lot of people that keep in contact with me, and they don't get into name calling or smear campaigns. I mean, they'll call corruption and wrongdoing out, which is correct, but they'll give me facts basically, things that are primarily facts, and I so much appreciate that. And so I'll comment. It's actually emergency exit. It's some of those from you that I've reposted that I've been censored for. I think that happened to you too, didn't it? I think there was a situation yeah. I think it was you, emergency exit. You made some comments about a particular thing. I won't say it here. And I made it, and it didn't seem like there was any problem. But then I realized that the reach had been cut off. I found that out from some listeners that they never saw that post. So then I realized that I was being censored, and I went back and I looked, and sure enough, it was censored all right. Yeah. All right. All right. That's all I got. I might add one more thing here. There have been some questions about uh, the origins and who's responsible and what the purposes were of medieval Kabbalah. And everybody thinks that Kabbalah is a black magic, evil situation. And I just want to tell you that that's not the case. No more so than any other type of prayer, meditation that you can do. It's not what you do, it's what your motivation is. So, and I won't mention who it was on here. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but this particular person was reading Rabbi Area Kaplan's uh, book about the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah means the book of creation or the book of formation. And it's been said that Adam, or at least Abraham, actually wrote it, and then it became codified. It became well known centuries later, and was and finally was brought out during the Kabbalistic period. And then there are all these commentaries written about it. And Area Kaplan was the Rabbi Area Kaplan, who was an amazing commentator and translator. Had some commentaries on the Sefer Yetzirah as well. And I just want to tell everybody that there are no easy answers. You're not going to go into any spiritual system and automatically be rushed off to the throne of glory. That's not going to happen. Take things slow and easy. Don't expect anything, just be. And in the Sefer Yetzirah, there are all these commentaries about, oh, well, if you understand the Sefer Yetzirah, the rabbis were able to make living golems or living people, living souls by using the words of the Sefer Yetzirah. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. What is a biblical text anyway? The Dead Sea Scrolls unapologetically. Oh, you're listening to Dr. Kip Davis at Emergency Exit. That's good. Yeah, Kip Davis is great. But anyway, on these things, like the Sefer Yetzirah, these are meditations and contemplations, they call it, on Hebrew letter sequences and different order of those sequences. And the purpose of that is to transcend the immediate present, I guess I could put it that way. A lot of people say, well, it's to get out of your physical body. No. That's not right at all. That's not right at all. That's a whole nother issue. No, that's not what you're doing. You're actually just being able to concentrate, meditate, contemplate on these things that you can then, at the proper time, it may happen immediately, it may not, but at the proper time, when you've been able to master the technique, you will be able to see into some of these other, what I call mansions or kingdoms. You'll be able to do that, but you can't stay long because it's too much for you. You're human. You're not. These are things that are sometimes very difficult to understand. So you don't stay too long. You just go and you look, and then you come back. And you don't do it alone. You always have somebody there with you, especially if you're new at it. If you're brand new at it, you got to have somebody there, because you can get the whole idea of, and this is true, however you feel about the Bible, this is true. God is a consuming fire. Doesn't mean he's evil, doesn't mean he wants to destroy you. It's the nature of the divine. The nature of the divine is that it's going to do what it does. And the burning bush analogy in Exodus is a good analogy of what it's like. You get too close, you stay too long, and you're going to get burned. Okay, unless you go through the proper procedure, and it's it's the refiner's fire. It's becoming more purified over time. And I'm not saying the body's bad or that even your desires and passions are bad. Okay, it's how you manage them that matters. So anyway, getting back on the Sefer Yetzirah, um, it's a very short book. You could read all the material probably within an hour. You won't understand it, but you could read it. In other words, it's not very long. The actual book itself, the commentaries like Arya Kaplan's are so expansive that you think, wow, this is really crazy stuff. Well, the commentators try to expand or explain the medieval Kabbalists who I don't have any respect for. I'm talking about Lowe, I'm talking about Luria, people like that. If you know who I'm talking about, Moses de Leon, stuff like that. The medieval Kabbalists, I don't have any respect for. Okay, um, the earlier ones like Rabbi Nehunya, Rabbi Akiva in the first century, who may have even known the early Christians and probably were involved in that in some way themselves. I even mentioned that in my book, The Crimson Thread. Uh, yeah, uh, I think they were onto something. But my point is, if you get the Sefer Yetzirah, I wouldn't worry about the Bahir and even though there's some good things about that, or the Zohar. But Sefer Yetzirah is very personal, and when you read it, it's going to be like, well, what's the point? Well, that is the point. Okay, you take a portion of that and you do those meditations and contemplations in the sequences, and if you go into it with no anticipation of reward or whatever, but you just do it to be. Remember, I've talked about the YHVH being to be consciousness. You're just conscious, okay? That's all it is. You're to be. If you're there, you never know. Some interesting things can happen. All right. Again, I'm sorry if I blew my top. I just, we can't be getting involved in this minuscule and dangerous tearing each other down. There are people that deserve to be called out. Trump needs to be called out. This federal agent that I'm talking about needs to be called out, and I'm disappointed that it looks like he was probably, a plant. I'm pretty certain that he, like Strzok, is still on the CIA payroll. I wouldn't doubt it a bit. So we have to watch out for people like that. But you notice I'm not here calling names. I'm just saying, Saul was a good example. We got to look out. We got to be aware. What really matters is what we should be paying attention to, not some little scuttlebutt that somebody wants to make over somebody. Okay? All right. I'm going. I'll see y'all later. I got some things I got to do out here for now.